All right, we are live.
Eli, yay.
Hi, Naveed.
Hey,
So,
man.
how's it going this morning, man?
It's going really great, man. Thanks. We're looking forward to tomorrow and doing some stuff with the family and got a lot to look forward to today too. So excited.
Do you always do like big plans for Father's Day?
We actually not really. I have to say not we don't really usually make a big thing of it. This just happens so that we have some close friends and we've been doing a lot of lake activities in the last few months. So um, looks like we're going to spend some time at the lake tomorrow.
Oh, that
So
sounds nice.
yeah, yeah. Charcoal grilling.
Oh, perfect. I love that. My
Yeah.
dad, I always do it. He loves a really like twice a year, Father's Day and on his birthday, he gets a classic pepper steak with old French style recipe, and that's something I make for him. I love to do that.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Yeah. And things were different. Yeah, when my dad was, so he's been, passed away 3 years ago. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so yeah, it's changed a bit, since then. That was always his really celebrating his legacy in the years prior. So haven't created any kind of routine or any kind of like regular annual thing yet. But yeah, yeah,
Well, that's funny. So that takes me into like one of my first questions is
yeah.
kind of start is what's one of your like how do you remember your father and what's your like favorite memory of him?
Sure. There I thought about that as well, and it's so hard to pick one because there were so many phases in life. But I narrowed it down to one because I think it speaks to so much about who he was and what I valued in the kind of character that my father had. So I was in 11th grade, and I was uh, getting ready, getting my sister's car because he bought her car, and I
Hmm.
had this old beater. I had this old like Buick with a bench seat, in the front, and not anything worth going to homecoming with, right? And I'm pretty sure I was getting ready for homecoming, getting her car all ready for homecoming, and I mean, spent all day like waxing it, cleaning it, the whole thing. And she just had a nicer car. She had this Oldsmobile that was just this nice leather interior, the whole thing, right?
Total
So
upgrade for you.
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolute upgrade. And had a V6. I mean, it was just good. It was a great car. And I'm getting it all ready, and then I go inside. I'm getting my tux and all everything else, whatever, and get ready. And then I step outside into our carport and get ready to go. And as I step outside, where I'd parked my sister's car, my dad had replaced it with a car for me that he bought.
Oh, wow.
And my sister was like behind a camera. Remember those old days, big VHS camera? She was like, she is recording my reaction and everything. And as it turns out, my dad had bought this car weeks ago, like weeks prior to that, and he had it uh, like detailed,
Wow.
and he had it hidden in my neighbor's garage for weeks for that day, and he wanted to surprise me with it that day. He knew it was a big deal, and he knew yeah. Anyway, he just knew he knew that was a big deal for me. And there's a couple things about that. Number one, this is a man that probably on average in his lifetime didn't make more than 35, $40,000 a year. So it
Wow.
wasn't like, it was very, very blue collar, right? Managed a gas station for the first 7 years, worked at Church's Fried Chicken was his first job in Liberty City, right? Um, he just eh, for him to do that, it's just a bigger deal
It really is.
when yeah, it's a bigger deal. I knew what that must have taken for him. And he bought the car cash. It wasn't like, "Oh, here you go, son. Here's the payments." No.
And you knew that back then, or was this something you discovered later on?
The thought about what he probably made didn't occur till later on in life, but I knew he didn't make much. I mean, there were I think the first my mom jokes about it to this day, first 2 or 3 years that after we bought the house in Orlando, my mom and dad didn't run the dishwasher to save electricity. They you know they uh, we didn't run the heater in the winter at times to save on electricity. It was that kind of frugalness in my house,
Hmm.
and so for him to do something like that, pure because it wasn't like I needed a car. My car was fine. Yeah, it stalled every once in a while, but but it
And
was fine,
and
you
you could
know?
use your sisters. I
Yeah,
mean,
and yeah, exactly, and I could borrow hers if I ever needed an upgrade, right? Um, but so for him to do something like that was just extraordinary, given that, yeah, it wasn't about him. It was purely for the joy of getting to do that for me and watch me, just, I mean, I was so lit up, right? I couldn't believe it. I was just so surprised.
I can only imagine you're going to, was it homecoming you said, or?
Yeah, it was either homecoming or prom, but I definitely it was my junior year. So it was just so unexpected. It wasn't like, I mean, he never really had to be hard on me about grades or anything like that. So it wasn't like I had to earn it. It wasn't like it wasn't like that. It wasn't, and he also trusted me enough to know that he wasn't, that wasn't going to spoil me in any way. That wasn't going to, keep me from being driven in life, or, all those other things that fathers think about when, oh, should I give my kids, I don't want to give them too much because then they'll take
No.
stuff for granted. And he just didn't have any of that going on. It wasn't like, and he wasn't like, okay, now you got to be, careful. He would always teach me how to take care of the car because he was big on taking care of the car. So in terms of responsibility and balancing that, I still want to raise a young man that's responsible, you know.
That,
Uh,
so that's funny. So I would, listening to that, can you see how your father was? Like, do you see any influences and how, because of him, how you become a father, like how you be as a father as well? Can you see any
yeah.
correlation between
Yeah,
that?
it's funny you say that. Not until this conversation did I actually get see that connection. It's so funny you asked that. Yeah, so the what just came up for me was those moments, like those. See, it's still happening right now. Like I'm just getting in touch with those moments when you watch your kid light up.
Hmm.
It's not always a toy or a thing or an event. There's something about. Recently, I had a great conversation with a friend of mine, Danny, who um, and it, fundamentally, what's I think of the biggest thing that gets me going in life is about causing joy in someone's life, and when it's your own kid and you watch them light up with, they want to like, let me show you I gotta show you the latest season 3 of Fortnite with Aquaman, Dad. You gotta see this, like that kind of exhilaration, even though I didn't have anything to do with that season
Right. You
3
don't care
Fortnite.
about Fortnite, but it doesn't matter.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. And I attended a Travis Scott event on Fortnite. So I mean I did literally
Okay.
I did do that. I did do the whole Fortnite Travis Scott live launch event with my kid, but it was getting to watch him fly with me through outer space with a giant Godzilla-sized Travis Scott in the middle of the map. Those kind of experiences where you're like, I literally turned, you could turn with the mouse, on the computer. He turned over and I see him and he's like, waving at me and look at me, Dad, check me out. I'm like flying through, and he's got the Travis Scott skin and everything. And it's it's just stuff like that you just those bonding moments, those kind of created moments that you just don't get over because they're exhilarating. They hit your heart. Yeah.
For people that might not know, how old are your kids? Like, how long have you been
Yeah.
a father?
Sure. So it's 11 and a half years. And I was like, well, probably should say 12 because the
They
moment
always
they're,
like it when you round up, right?
well, the moment you find out
Oh,
your wife's pregnant, I mean, you're living into that reality, right? You're living, it's like, oh, okay, this is real, this is happening. And then it gets even more real as you start to feel the baby in their belly and the whole thing. And then of course me, I just started studying. I just I just two there are only two books that I carried around with me. One was something about parenting and babies and their development stages and what's happening in the womb because I had to know. And then and then the second thing was learning how to use a digital camera, like a SLR. So I went nuts about with digital photography and bought lenses, and because I was going to be that dad, like.
did you do it? Do you
Oh yeah.
all like chronic, like
Oh,
cat?
I became a Nikon nerd. I mean, I was like, I had a D90 for Dummies book that I flew around with, and I mean, I just I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that was something. But so
Those-
yeah, 12 years. They're 8, and to answer your question, they're 8 now, 8 and 11. So soon to be 9 and 12.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so you talked about, I love how you talked about how you jumped, like you became a father the moment that they were conceived, not just when they were born,
Yeah,
right?
the moment I found out, and it's not always what you think it's going to be. And it was a surprise. It wasn't like, oh, we were Planned Parenthood, like really trying to have. No, we weren't trying to have a baby. In fact, yeah, all things considered, I would have definitely said we're not ready. I mean, if anybody had asked me, no one did.
That's it, right? You usually don't get those questions. Yep.
Right? It's like, we definitely were not ready. No, like on a 1 to 10 scale, we were like a 9 on not ready.
Wow.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So what would you say was like the most challenging aspect of being a father?
Well, for me, and this is so important, I think. So for me, the aspect that when my older son was diagnosed with autism when he
Mm,
was three-ish, 3.5, he was in a daycare, and his daycare teacher had pointed something out to my wife and said, "Hey, you might want to get him checked out." And so I'll never forget that morning. I was getting ready in the closet, just put my tie on or whatever, and my wife from the other side of the room, she's like, "Hey, hon, we should get Alam's teacher thinks we should get him checked out." And I was like, immediately where I went was, "Is he sick? Like, is he coughing?" I didn't notice any symptoms. That's where I went. And she's like, "No, she wants to get him checked out just for autism." And I'm like, I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" No, and immediately there was the rejection, right? The
oh yeah.
notion of no, no, it's just too much. And in fact, I can remember even talking to some family friends that are in the medical field, and they were like, "Oh, it's probably just listen, it's probably nothing." You know, we are in a state of overdiagnosis, especially with autism. It's probably nothing. Um, I even heard comments like, "Peop this has been normal for years. It's just a kid being a kid."
Right.
So, uh, that it's just an overreaction, right? And I'm like, "Okay." Didn't need that agreement, but okay, because it didn't lessen the worry. And so I spent the entire morning at work completely distracted Googling what is autism.
Oh no,
How
don't
how
Google it. That must
how
have
do you, how do you oh, I couldn't work. Eli was like 3 straight hours, and at some point I finally looked over at my coworker, Peggy, and I was like, "Can I just tell you something?" It's like, I'm not sitting here working. We worked in an open office space, so she was literally catty cornered to me, and I was like, "I'm not working. I'm spent all morning Googling." And I just kind of told her the truth about it, and she's like, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." And then I was like, I just don't know about it. What I discovered was how ignorant I was. And I
yeah.
felt, because so there's that guilt of how did I not know, or what would how should I have known, or could I have known? And then I started taking quizzes myself. Like I started looking at the quizzes, like how do you tell if your kid has autism and what signs? And so I started doing quizzes on myself, and my own answers I was like, well, I do that. Well, I mean, I'm kind of like that. So am I autistic too? Like what the? And so then there was all this cognitive dissonance, right? Like not wanting to believe it, wanting it to be not wanting it to be true, but at the same time, I really want to know so we can do something about it. That was the most challenging few months of my entire fatherhood. And then when he was diagnosed with autism, you know, uh, at that point, it was more like, okay, good. How do we deal with it? What do we need to do? Learn about it. The embarrassment and the ego kicks in around, well, I want my kid to be in an Ivy League school and all that stuff, and he's going to be this, that, and the other, and um, they said because he wasn't very verbal, and that was challenging. But I didn't know this was our first child, so I didn't know what to compare it to really, other than my niece who was, you know, young, almost the same age, 10 days apart, and very talkative, very different than him. I was like, "Oh, well, that's just girls," and everyone would say that in the family. "Oh, girls talk earlier." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And right. And so these kind of stereotypes of children, and I think that's important, buying into any kind of stereotype is sometimes silly, but other times you got to pay attention, and when to pay attention and what to pay attention to. It's just, and then how to manage it. I mean, my wife and I went to classes for parents with kids with autism because often at times, and thank God I had other self development education that really I used a lot. watching parents grieve and deal with kids on the spectrum, because you have everything from kids that are, almost no control over what they do in their bodies and how they act out. Uh, we didn't have that. Luckily, we didn't have, Alam's never been, a biter or a kid
Right.
that slams his head against the wall or anything like that. I mean, and I say that because it is serious. I mean, what parents go through in terms of their own depression and dealing with it and their own angst. But there is help out there. There's a big community. All I can ever say to parents is, encourage them to reach out and connect with parents that deal with the same situations. I can tell you this: no parent can understand something like that or anything else that your kid might be dealing with in the that would qualify as special need. Um, no one can understand it unless they've been through it. So talking to someone that knows about it, like knowledge wise, great people over at UCF, the card system that supports autism initiatives, it, they know some stuff, but they can't relate to the experience. So yeah, that's been the biggest challenge, man. That
Yeah.
has been. But I tell you, he's doing great. We have him in a new school this last year. We took him out of public school a year and a half ago. He's thriving. He's doing wonderful. They said he was possibly going to be nonverbal when he was 3.5, like that he wasn't going to speak or very limited speech. He's it's quite the opposite. So there there is hope, right? You don't know. I wouldn't be conclusive about what people say in terms of expert opinions of any type. Um, he is lively. He's the most loving child you'll ever meet. I mean, he's a absolute joy and in many ways the model child, like the child that you would want. He's a hugger. He's a cuddler. He's present. He is awake. He is filled with questions and curiosities and intricacies. And one year he can't multiply any numbers. The next year he's doing algebra, and he's doing geometry and trig. He's in fourth grade.
Really doing
Yeah,
trade. Wow.
yeah, yeah. No, he was starting to do basic differential equations a few months ago,
I can't do those.
and I was like, "What or what happened?" So there's like so that's unexpected too with kids. I think in development, switches sometimes flip off, and you don't know. All you can do as a parent is provide the exposure to things for them to try out and see which ones really kind of resonate with them. So I'm big time not into forcing children to do something that I love. I just bought an RC car like a month ago because I love RC cars. Turns out my 11-year-old doesn't really care for 'em much. He's like, "Yeah, whatever." My 8-year-old is kinda into it, right? He's kinda okay. So, you gotta be open to discovering, what really fascinates them, what gets them going, and then lead with
Sounds
that.
like it was an extremely humbling experience. Like you had maybe a certain expectation about how things were going to go, and then you had to just learn to adapt to whatever showed up and still stay,
Yeah.
not make it get caught up in any of it, right? Like,
Yeah, and that's where I think, Eli and everyone that's watching, I think that's where we gotta lean on our parents, and that's where that connection you know, with the wisdom that my mom and dad had around special needs for children, they had lived so much of their life. And I mean, I was 30 when we had our first son, so we're a little over 30, but they had so much experience to share. Like, hey, look, don't worry about it. It's gonna be great no matter what. And I'm like, how can you say this? I was so driven to like with grades and this and that and everything else. They're like, yeah, you were driven that way. We didn't like tell you had to do that. That's who you are.
mm.
Everyone's an individual and every child's an individual. Quit trying to, in so many words, they were like, quit trying to mold them into being who you need them to be. Now they're like, it hasn't worked with you guys, so why would you do? Like, okay, you're right. Fine. They really do pick their paths. You can only guide so much, and I think we're more like those bumpers in the bowling alley. We're more the bumpers. We're more the there's a lane, sure. They're gonna pick which lane they want to bowl in anyway. Haven't you noticed? And
Yeah.
then and you just got to be those bumpers because there's things that we can be responsible for that allow for healthy engagement in life and living and yeah.
Yeah, well, you gave him opportunities, right? By putting him in a special school or working with him certain ways, and so it's like that. But you're still, like you said, he's still his own man, right? He's still going to make his own choices. He has his own dreams, his own likes, his own dislikes.
That's right. Yeah, one day he wants to own a restaurant, and another day he wants to, just be home with us forever. And other days, I mean, it's just yeah, it changes too. So yeah, you just don't know.
So that's perfect segue. So I would ask next, like, so what are you most proud of as a father?
Yeah. So for me, it's my my boys. Um, it's so funny, right? Because if you'd asked me before I became a father, I would have been like, "Oh, what do I want to be proud of? Like, what should this look like?" Right? Straight A students and top like just academics and all it would have been a lot about academics and you know being involved. No, it's not that at all. It really comes. I'm most proud of watching how they behave with other people,
Mm,
strangers on the street. My 8-year old still to this day, if we're out somewhere, he says, "Dad," because of COVID, and we were at the getting his haircut the other day. And there was this little girl getting her hair cut, and she was waiting next to her mommy or whatever. And he's like, and we had masks on and stuff, the whole. And he's like, "Dad, is it okay to say hi? Can I say
mm,
hi to to her?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can say hi." That he wants to connect, that he wants to say hello, that he wants to be friendly, that he wants to find out about people, and they're both that way. They're both very engaging socially, and I think that's so important. It's largely the quality of our life. I think can and should be judged by the quality of the relationships and engagements that we have of those around us, even if they're complete strangers. Is your first reaction kindness? Is your first reaction to connect? Is that the first reaction? And large in part theirs is.
mm.
I thought it was weird at first with our older son when he was little. He would be so like wanting to go up to strangers. Like he was just like he had this thing like, "Hi, what's your name? Are you married? Do you have kids? How old are they?" I mean, he just wanted to find out in the neighborhood. He wanted to know which houses had kids. You know, he just wants to connect with people. He's fascinated with people and children, and we've been nothing but encouraging about that. Obviously, taking the appropriate precautions, like
Of course.
stranger danger. That.
It's funny though, right? That you have to, yeah, you always have to find a balance because you don't want to squash his natural inclination to just want to be out there with people, but at the same time, you got to teach him that you got to be discerning in your choices. I guess would be the
That's right. I think as long as there's a parent around and an adult around that you're with, then certainly you can be more open and free. But yeah, certainly not when he's and they know the difference if they're by themselves outside or in the backyard. I mean, they don't wander far these days, especially they just don't wander. But they know to be careful. They know to you know. In fact, I quiz them. Like, so what if what
sounds
if a
like
stranger?
they
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
like they exploded your heart in a way, like in a good way. Like, it's funny you're saying like more analytical, right? In the beginning, like, oh, if I could have a kid that's really successful in school and, does this and that and all those markers that we think are, well, me and you have that similarity, right? We're driven in that way. So those are to us are the markers that are really like important. And then
exactly.
you have a kid and what you're really most proud of is that he's like caring.
Yeah, 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 and appreciating their triumphs, I think, is the other. I mean, I'm proud of that they both have this desire to win at whatever they're up to. And for my 8-year-old, it was the Ninja Fit gym stuff. So he knows all of the um he knows all the characters, he knows all the names, the countries, everything. He's just and watching him do because we have a gym nearby and watching him do those exercises and the moment that he goes past a point that he's never gone before, those points where you like it's that extra ring on the thing or that extra th- or the time he has me time him do things, and when he beats his own time it's like yes, and he like pulls it in, he's like he pulls in his fist yes. And watching them have that kind of a victory over themselves mostly. It's I don't others fine, I don't really care. It's about them, about where they are. That next sit up, that next whatever it is just awesome.
So inside of that, is there are there any particular memories? I mean, I would say best, but I'm sure that's must be really challenging. But are there any particular memories that really stand out to you in fatherhood, like things that have happened or experiences that you've had that really just like,
There's there's so many, there are so many, but I'll tell you this, because it's right here. The night my first son was born,
mm,
I'll never forget the night he was born in the hospital. And we went in for an emergency C-section, so it's unexpected. My wife had preeclampsia, and so the only solution to that high blood pressure thing is we had to deliver the baby. So it was about 2 weeks early, 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier than we had expected, and we rushed in. Um, and then they do their thing, and I'm waiting, 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 waiting. Parents are in the lobby downstairs. It was scheduled, so we knew when they were going to do the actual perform the surgical right delivery of the baby. Um, but that night, because he was 5.3 pounds and I was laying next to him. He's a little peanut. I mean, he'd fit in one palm, right? And my wife wasn't feeling very well and from the surgery and everything else. So it wasn't like I had pictured, right? Oh, the baby's just going to be on her chest sleeping the entire night. And no, it wasn't like that. And so I had him the first night, and I remembered listening to him breathing. It was very quiet, cold. I was laying on the couch in the hospital room with him in my arms, and I couldn't sleep. I was just staring at him, and I was listening really closely to his breath. And anytime I heard any kind of wheezing, I noticed like this kind of wheezing. This, what is that? And I got concerned, and I got up and like went down the hallway to nurse. Hey, nurse, is this normal? And it was this. And while that may sound like, gosh, that sounds pretty traumatic. No, what dawned on me was the opportunity of getting to be responsible for another human being for the rest of my life,
mm, wow.
and the
Not as a,
privilege. Yeah,
yeah,
no, not as a
I get
burden,
that.
like the privilege of getting to be a father. To get like, oh, huh, it comes with all of it. It comes with all of the that I get to do that. I get to be that. I get to be someone that he can unequivocally count on. Yeah.
Do you see that, like, did that, obviously that moment when your son was born changed you in so many ways.
Mm, yeah.
Do you see that did it shape or impact the trajectory of your life?
Completely. Completely. I mean, what was important, um, talk a lot about legacy at times. And yeah, there's definitely what you're leaving behind, and the footprints, the what you leave that's important, that's of value in terms of how they are with other people and who they are for other people, who they are for women. I mean, that's such a big deal to me. How what kind of men they are towards women is like massively important to me. So the emphasis on when you have another, especially when you have young men, the kind of man that you want to create in the world. Yeah, it shifted everything. Just changed my outlook for what's important, what matters, what really matters.
Did it actually impact like, your career or your life yourself in choices that you made?
Um, yeah, for sure, it brought additional challenges. I mean, there was whatever career I thought I was going to have, and I mean, I've always been driven without. I mean, it doesn't really take anything or anyone to drive me towards what I want in terms of quote unquote success. It did shape my decisions for sure. I made a pretty big shift. 4 years into a career that I thought I was going to have forever, which involved traveling, 38 weeks out of the year, being gone, and all that. So in terms of a message for people, regrets, right? Of the missed opportunities were really honing in on that time with the kids and the time to create special occasions, learning lessons, memories, engagements with them. Uh, and they always say it, right? You'll never get that time back, and you don't actually get that time back. So rather than concentrating on the past, obviously now it's like, okay, what moments am I creating with them? What
Mm.
And my son's first moment on a jet ski a few months ago was like, oh, and first moment driving his own jet ski. Whoa, like
Wow,
those kind of moments is like, oh, that's so cool, man. And I want more of that. And I'm gonna get a lot more of that.
that's beautiful. Naveed, I just want to acknowledge I know we said about half an hour, so we're almost wrapped up. Do you have a couple more minutes?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So I just, I feel like it's perfect segue again right into. So based on what you just said, about the moments being so valuable and how it shaped you, do you have any advice for new or upcoming fathers?
Um, breathe like I just did just now. Breathe,
Breathe.
breathe, because there are times that you really question yourself. You question your decisions. You question, or if you don't. By the way, I think maybe that for some people, like they just think that they just know already, and they are so ready, and so don't beat yourself up for not being as ready as you thought you were or should be. I'd say that first and foremost. Don't be hard on yourself like you should have known just because you watched your dad do it or you watched your mom do it. A lot of the ways that we form our parenting are based on what we think our dad or mom should have done better or should not have done at all, or wow, I'm never going to do that. And we haven't fully examined those things, so you haven't you don't you can judge your 25-year-old dad if that's how that's how old he was, or your mom. My mom was 23 or 24 when she had me. So we lack perspective growing up, and then we think later on in our parenting years that somehow that 15-year-old perspective about how awful dad was or how awful mom was, that should be taken into full consideration as to the kind of parent we want to be. And you know, that lends itself to making ourselves wrong about what we should and shouldn't do rather than finding our own what's of most importance to us, like what's the value, what's the principle I'm really standing for. Sometimes we're too principled and it's all about, yeah, but my principle, and protecting something, some right. I think the drivenness to be right about how to parent
Oh,
is just lethal. I mean, y- haven't you noticed if you Googled being a good parent, the billions of results that you'll get back as if there's a way? There's no the way. So give that up. Um, Enjoy them, enjoy the subtleties. Enjoy, we watched a Disney movie last night together. The movie was terrible. It was just awful. It's just awful. But getting to snuggle up on the couch, popcorn, watch it's our Friday night movie night ritual. I mean, that's just so have these kind of rituals. They will see them as important. Then, by the way, just remember the people that are likely to take care of you are the ones that you're raising right now in the age and the time of need as you get older. I'm fortunate that my
yeah.
mom lives with us, and having my mom nearby. I mean, I had my head on her lap last night watching the movie. So, that's that's what I want. That's what's valuable to me. And if something's valuable to you, make sure that you're doing and carrying that value forward with your kids so they learn it. Otherwise, it's not what will be taught or be around when it comes time for you to grow old and have
Mm,
some needs of your own.
wow. So what I'm hearing is really, don't make parenting as a way to correct what you didn't get from your parents. Really make parenting an opportunity to connect with your child and really like empower whatever they're there for. Like really honor that relationship. Don't have like leave that past behind, right? Like whatever worked or didn't
Yes
work.
and no, Eli. I think yes and no. It's not so set in stone like that. What I said was that you got to examine those decisions.
Ah,
See, finding out why my dad became the way he became and actually having conversations to find out, well, what was that about moving to Germany and being by yourself for 2 years while my sister and I were 2 and 3 years old? Like, what had you do that? What were you thinking? What was the perspective? What was the perspective? Because if you understand their perspective, it gives you way more depth of understanding, and then you can choose, like, why were you so angry, dad? Oh, okay, might have had something to do with the abuse that you had as a child. Oh, okay. So all of a sudden there was this compassion and understanding, and now I was a chronic nice guy Do you know what I mean? Like chronic nice guy, like had to be nice, had to be good to people, couldn't be argumentative, non-confrontational, to a flaw.
Mm,
But in discovering that, my father's experiences gave me the freedom to then choose how to be in my own life. Not, I'm not going to be, so you live a not dad life. Otherwise, you live a not going to be dad life or not going to be like that, like mom life, as opposed to, whoa, 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 hang on, question mark. Let me go find out what was
wow.
it like to be my mom at 23, at 27, at 30 when she came to the country. What was it like? What was it like? And I cherish those stories that my dad shared with me. Cherish them because they gave me the freedom to think of what are my values and what do I want to be.
I also hear the how that would really cement the whole family unit together, like really
Mm,
pull him into with you and with your kids, and really
mm.
have you all really be like just a solid, cohesive whole together. It's amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely, Eli. Absolutely, man. That is us to a T. That what you just said. That is who we are. My immediate family, my sisters, my mom. My dad, wife. That's just how we operate.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Naveed, listen, I just want to end by acknowledging you for, you know, thank one for coming on and being willing to share about this with the world and letting people know and just who you are. Like to me, you're a father to people in so many ways. Like obviously you're a father to your family, but you're also a father, like a mentor and a driver for so many people out there.
Mm,
And you know, it takes something to do that.
mm. Yeah. Yes. Yes, it does.
So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful, awesome Father's Day because you deserve it.
Mm.
And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Oh, thank you, Eli. Thanks for the opportunity, and everyone, thanks for listening in. Okay. Have a great one.
You too, Navi.
All right. Bye.